Another IG Live interview. I'm so excited to be talking to Joy Michael Ellison about their new book, Willi Ninja, Vogue Legend. If you're like me, you grew up listening to the Madonna song and seeing that video of people voguing, but do you know the actual history behind it? That's what we're going to dig into in this picture book biography. You can get your own copy and find out all about it. Really gorgeous illustrations and really interesting story that most of us don't know anything about. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great, thanks for so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk with you. Why don't we go ahead and jump in and you can tell us, introduce yourself, although a lot of people may already know you, and tell us what was your journey to becoming a children's book author?
Sure. So my name is Joy Michael Ellison. I use they, them pronouns, and I have a PhD in gender and women's studies. And I'm actually a historian focused on queer and trans communities in the United States. In addition to being a writer and a lifelong activist. So I really care about showing people what it takes to change the world, and giving people what I call possibility models for how to be a part of social movements. So for me, I'm telling LGBT history, translating what I know as a scholar into picture books is a perfect way to do that sort of teaching with children and their parents.
Right. Oh, and I encourage people to go through your Instagram. I mean, you have a lot of instances like this where you go to a certain site and say, this is what happened here. So for, like you said, I mean, the picture books are for kids and their parents, but you also have a lot of material kind of really, you can tell you're very dedicated to helping the public know, like sharing, not like kind of an academic in some tower somewhere, but really helping other people understand this history. And maybe you could talk about that a little bit. As you said, you're an activist, you're an academic, you've had political commentary featured in the Washington Post, among other places. So how do picture books fit into kind of that larger project that you do?
I love that question. On a really practical level, as a historian, I get to dig through archives and talk to really cool elders in my community. And I come across these amazing stories that inspire me and help me believe in the possibility of taking action and making the world a better place. But they don't necessarily fit into the books that I get to write as an academic. So I love taking those stories and translating them into all sorts of forms that stretch broader than the academy. But on a personal level, my mom is a retired elementary school librarian. Yeah, so I have always loved picture books. I've always felt like picture books were a great way to learn about anything, but especially topics where you're learning about something that either is a part of yourself that isn't really talked about, or that's a part of other people and isn't really talked about. Picture books really help us make those intellectual and emotional connections. So for me, this is just an incredibly joyful art form where I get to do the work I do in so many other places in a way that I think is more fun and potentially more powerful.
Right. Especially like you said, I imagine there's not a lot of emphasis on emotional connection in academic works. Whereas in
Sadly,
picture books,
no. Although academics are really emotional, like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
very.
Well, in your approach to history, especially talking to kids, one thing I love is that you talked about that you try to avoid the heroes and holidays approach because it shows people out that it's apolitical symbols without communities. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? And then that can kind of lean into maybe what your approach was in this book.
Yeah. So kind of the idea of avoiding heroes and holidays is something that I was taught as an
Mhm.
activist. Because when we talk about history in terms of heroic individuals, or cultural celebrations that occur once a year, we're doing two things. One, we're separating individuals from the movements that they were a part of,
Mhm.
and then from their entire communities, and from the role that community plays
Right.
in social movements. And then when we're talking about holidays, we often are turning entire communities into kind of symbols of fun and frivolity and just like apolitical culture. Like right now, it's Pride, which is great. But if we're talking about Pride as though it's just a holiday for queer and trans people where we're
Mhm.
happy, we're missing out on the power of Pride, on the
Mhm.
history of the Stonewall Rebellion. So I really want to tell stories in a way that highlights the community that individuals are a part of and gives um, gives representation to our struggles for justice.
Mhm.
So in Willi Ninja, Vogue Legend, I got to do that with some really cool illustrations, and as well as back matter, where some of the other people who are incredibly famous in ballroom,
Mhm.
like the mothers at the House of Pendavis and at the House of Dupree, are present visually
Mhm.
in the story. Hector Extravaganza is here with Willi. Um, and Willi is just never alone.
Mhm.
He's always driving his own story, but in a community. And then in the back matter, I get to explain how important community was to Willi,
Mhm.
and how Willi is really an example of using your culture to care for other people so that an entire community can survive really difficult circumstances.
Right. But so why did you pick Willi Ninja? Especially because looking at the other books you've written for kids, oh my God, one here, Flor Fights Back. Um, they're much more focused, or maybe more directly focused on activism. So just on the surface, writing about a dancer, although it's very simplistic just to say he was a dancer, but like I said, just on the surface, this might seem like a real departure. Do you see it as a departure, or how do you see them connected?
That's a great question. So my first book was Sylvia and Marsha Start a Revolution, and was like really focused on police harassment and the reasons why there was a rebellion at the Stonewall Inn that night in June in 1969. But it also was all about how Sylvia and Marsha used their friendship
Mhm.
as the basis for a political movement to take care of other girls like them. Willi Ninja really did the same exact
Mhm.
thing in starting a house that became known for its dance moves.
Mhm.
Willi was adopting children who into his house. And these were often like teenagers
Mhm.
or adults who had no one else to
Mhm.
be their family. Um, and in that way, it really is the same politics. And it's
Mhm.
the same sort of way of sharing what you have in
Right.
order to build a community that can work for broader change. It's also really important, I think, right now. This book is really well timed because we all need a little bit of a reminder of the power of music and dance
Right.
and being with one another, just so
Mhm.
that we can push through what's happening around us.
Right. Yeah. So wow. So how did you pick? Was Willie Ninja someone you were really familiar with beforehand, or how did you come across his story?
Great question. So this was actually one where one of my closest friends said to me, "Why not Willi Ninja?"
Mm,
And I had not thought of Willi. And Willi, I knew a lot about the house system. I knew about the role that balls played in helping people survive the AIDS crisis, but I didn't know all that much about Willi.
mhm,
Um, in part because the primary sources about Willi are pretty limited. Um, but it didn't take that much to dig up some stuff about his childhood,
mm,
which is often a really important part of any picture book biography.
mm,
And I think finding out those little tidbits of how he made up Vogue. Yes,
mhm.
yes,
Nabi.
yes.
Mhm.
And how his mom took him to the Apollo Theater.
Oh,
Yeah, and really was very supportive of him at a time when people couldn't count on that.
mhm.
Um, those, as soon as I found that information, I was like, yes, this is going to work and it's going to be really cool.
Well, talk a little bit about his mom, because maybe just as a parent reading the book, that was something that really struck me, is that she was so supportive and that she would take him out and help him imagine himself, you know, being on the stage, being a dancer. Uh, what do you think that adults can get out of reading this book?
I really hope that adults will see an example of just being a good parent.
Hmm.
And just like seeing your child for who they really are. Yeah, loving them and encouraging them, connecting them to the cultural things that are important to you.
Hmm.
Um, and then reminding them that they are capable of doing what they want to do. And for Willi, Willi came out to his mom much, much later. And she said, I always knew that was her response. I just always knew. And that's definitely the case for some parents. And then it's the case for other parents that they're surprised. And I think we need kind of stories that just give parents a really subtle lesson
Hmm.
in remembering what they already know, how to really love their children.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. And um, we've been showing some of the illustrations from the book, Nabi H. Ali. Do you have a favorite that you could show us? Because
I
the thing that
totally
gets, I mean, like you said, it really captures the joy, but also movement of the dance, which I imagine must be so hard to do, but it really comes across on the page.
Yeah. Like, look at, I mean, this cover is
Yes,
incredible. Just
beautiful.
a friend of mine was telling me that she was reading this out loud to her third graders, and they all started doing
Oh,
this,
I love
which I
it.
love. I love. Yeah. Yeah. Nabi Ali just did an incredible job. You can see the research in all of this and feel the energy. But my favorite picture is definitely this one, where Willie's just walking down the street with his mom. And in the other side, you could see like some people who are not so happy with
Mhm.
seeing such a joyful little boy swishing around. But I just love this picture because I know this kid.
Right.
And it's beautiful to see that child also like protected
Mhm.
by his mother in a way I think a lot of us understand,
Mhm.
or a lot of us wish for. And you know, I think for queer and trans adults, reading picture books like this, it does a little healing of our
Mhm.
pasts. Like
Mhm.
we've got that little inner child that still loves to see like other children getting care,
Right.
that maybe we got and maybe we didn't.
Right. Well, I want to go back to something you had mentioned about doing the research and how the primary resources were so thin. Is that something that you found is particularly true doing queer and trans history, that I would just imagine that maybe mainstream historical archives might not have some of that? Is it like a more challenging to try and find kind of accurate, good research or resources to use?
It's definitely getting extremely challenging to find
Mm,
accurate resources because I am telling you, most of the things you find on the internet are not going
right.
to be true or need to be verified. And that's for a good reason because people are really excited and they want to share what they think they know.
Mm,
But yeah, you do have to go. I go to Queer and Trans Archives
mm,
specifically because those are the institutions that have thought that our community stories are important to preserve. But when you go there, you find so much.
mm,
Like there's a pervasive argument in academia even that, oh, like trans people aren't good archival subjects. We're not in the
mm,
archives or we're in the
mm,
archives inaccurately. And I found
mm.
that's just not the case. Trans
Really?
people, like every other community, have wanted to document their stories, and trans people have had a lot of reason to want to educate the public and
Mm,
to find each other. All of that is present
mhm.
in the archives. It's all there. There's nothing like magical. Trans people aren't ghosts, and I
Right.
say that, but there are academic articles that say like trans people haunt the archives, and
Mm,
I think it's really silly.
mhm.
Um,
And I
I feel like that to
and Willi
children. I think
Ninja,
children know
uh,
that. Children
especially
know.
as like, but like you said about finding accurate resources. So you would recommend people go to like queer and trans archives, of like go to find really reliable sources for them.
Yeah, I think that there are two things that are really good to do. One is like read books
Mm,
by academics. Read books that go through the review process that
mm,
academics go through, um, or find other sources that are citing those sources. And
mm,
if you find something, you should always be able to find some citations.
mhm,
And go and look at those citations and see, do you agree? Do they really exist?
right.
But one thing that's happening right now politically is we have an attack on the idea of authority, that
Mhm,
some people study things,
right.
and that's becoming a symbol of elitism when like we're just nerds,
Uh-huh.
man, we're just nerds. But we do know things,
Mhm,
and we're very committed to being accurate.
mhm,
So I really recommend not doing your own research, but looking at the research that is there and
mhm.
evaluating it using your critical thinking, and then go and look at the
Right.
archives.
Mm. And especially, it strikes me that as people are getting more and more of their information from social media, I think a lot of us, like we see something on, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram, and then it's a kind of like that you have to be very careful, like you say, where you get your sources from. Is the person an academic, or do they think like they know what they're talking about? Like, and that can be a little tricky for people to figure out. I think of knowing what the reliable sources are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that as we get more information, it's harder to do that work because we're being asked to do it all the time.
Hmm.
And because things like AI are disorienting.
Right. Hmm.
Um, but we can remember that we've been faced with this problem and the need for critical thinking
Hmm.
our entire history. Like that's always been something humans have had to do. We can do it.
Right.
And we can teach our kids to do that as well. And I really encourage people to talk to their children about what you read with them
Mm,
and to read out loud above your child's reading level,
mm,
above their experience level, because you're there to help
right.
them understand.
Mhm.
And that's going to be really powerful for them. And it's going to help you learn things too.
Right, right, good. Which ties right back to the story of Willi Ninja. I think a lot of us, I was saying kind of at the beginning that a lot of us grew up, or people my age, grew up with the song, with the Madonna song and the dance, and thinking that not really knowing where it came from other than that. So this is it made me think about how much mainstream culture has been influenced by people of color, by queer people, trans people, but without most of us maybe knowing that that's where it comes from. Why is it so important to make sure people know the stories like Willi Ninja's, and that this does get preserved?
I love that question. For me, the really important thing um, that question opens up is the fact that queer and trans people, people of color, all of these so-called marginalized people actually are at the center of our society. And that what happens to us is relevant to everybody else. And it's really, really important to include queer and trans people, people of color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in our understandings of the world, because it's not just because it's incomplete without us, but because it's inaccurate without us. We can't understand what is happening without understanding the people who created some of the things we love, and the people who have really suffered under systems that are also impacting everyone.
Right, which is something I know you've talked about how intertwined, and when you talk about social justice, you can't separate out like queer people, trans people, people of color, immigrants. Like this is all kind of intertwined with each other, and just goes back to what you were saying about how important it is. It's not like this would just be one more missing story, but it's a missing piece of the larger story of us as a people, as humanity, which
Absolutely. And I think one thing I hope that people start to understand is it's not just nice to include others, it is in our material self-interest to understand and include other people, because when we do, we can build movements that are going to make it better for everyone, including ourselves, including all of the ways that we are privileged, because almost everyone is in some fashion, and all of the ways that we are oppressed, because most of us are in some fashion or will be in the future.
And you said that this is part of what's going to be a series. I don't know how much can you tell us about, do you know yet who you're going to be including, or can give us some clues?
Yeah. I can't say exactly who it's going to be yet, but there are 3 more books that are already in progress and are going to be coming out like every May for the next 3 years. Yeah, I'm incredibly excited. And I've chosen historical figures that first I love, who mean a lot to me personally, and second, who I think are going to excite children and also help them understand how people. And I'm working with incredible illustrators. So the books are going to be beautiful. Candlewick has done a really nice job. And I am really hoping that people will get excited so we can keep writing more books like this.
Yes, I hope so too, because this is such a beautiful book. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us about it today. Before I let you go though, do you think that you will be returning to middle grade, or are you just really enjoying the picture book space right now?
Oh, great question. Right now I'm spending my summer days doing the copy editing for a big academic book.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's called The Trans Midwest. It's coming out January 2027. Um, so it's hard for me to think about anything longer than
Right.
about 1,000 words. But I love middle grade. I
Mm.
think that it's really, really fun. And getting to talk to children and like middle schoolers about Flor Fights Back has been just an absolute pleasure. Yeah, it's a great book.
Mhm.
Please read it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely interested.
Mm.
But we'll see what happens next.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you so much for talking with us today. This was really fun.
Thanks so much for having me, and thank you for promoting books like this.
Mm.
Every time people right now talk about these books, read these books, share these books, it really is important politically. It's gonna keep our world from getting a whole lot worse and contribute
Mm.
to everybody's efforts to make it better.
I like, and I know you talked about that on your social media because I feel like we could talk about that, but I'm so glad you brought that up. That as much as we might not think they're a big deal, but just sharing picture books, reading them to children, requesting them from the library, buying copies if you're able to do that, just how important that is in the big picture.
It really, really is. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And thanks to all of you for watching. We will see you next week for another great interview. Bye.
Bye.